Everything she had built, her career, her home, her trust, crumbled in an instant. One betrayal shattered a life that looked perfect from the outside, leaving her with nothing but questions, pain, and a world that suddenly felt unrecognizable. What would you do if everything you believed in was suddenly gone? How far would you go to reclaim your life, your identity, or even just a sense of control? This is the story of a person whose life and reputation were torn apart by unforeseen events, a journey through loss, resilience, and reinvention. In this video, we will uncover the choices she made, the risks she took, and the truths that finally emerged from the chaos. Truths that will challenge everything you thought you knew about strength, survival, and the human spirit. The crash that changed everything. The journey that had inspired millions came to a devastating halt on a remote road in South America. What happened in those moments would test Noraly in ways that 5 years of adventure had never prepared her for. The crash occurred far from civilization, far from hospitals, far from anyone who could help. The location's extreme remoteness transformed what might have been a recoverable injury in a well-equipped city into a prolonged ordeal filled with risk and uncertainty. Noraly found herself stranded, injured, and alone in conditions that offered no easy rescue. The waiting was agonizing. Struggling through harsh conditions with injuries that screamed for medical attention. Every minute stretched into eternity. Every movement brought fresh waves of pain. The isolation that had once felt liberating now felt terrifying. Help was not coming quickly. Help might not come at all. When proper medical care was finally reached, the diagnosis confirmed what the pain had already suggested. The injuries were severe. A broken collarbone required surgery, but the complications did not end there. During or after the procedure, a loose bone fragment punctured her lung, creating a crisis that threatened her life, and extended the recovery period far beyond what anyone anticipated. The combination of skeletal damage and pulmonary trauma demanded extensive rehabilitation. Lung function had to be carefully restored through breathing exercises, constant monitoring, and gradual exposure to physical stress. Doctors emphasize that recovery from such injuries is measured in months, not weeks. The road back to full capability would be as mentally demanding as it was physically exhausting. Small setbacks could shake progress at any moment. Patience and discipline would be tested repeatedly. There were no shortcuts. There was only the slow, grinding work of rebuilding a body that had been broken. But the physical injuries were only part of the challenge. The psychological consequences of such a traumatic crash proved equally significant. Confidence that had been built over 160,000 kilometers suddenly felt fragile. Fear that had been managed through experience suddenly felt overwhelming. The motorcycle that had represented freedom now represented danger. The road that had provided direction now represented risk. How does someone whose entire identity is built around adventure cope when that adventure nearly kills them? To understand the weight of that question, you need to understand how the journey began. You need to travel back to the moment when a heartbroken woman with nothing left to lose discovered that a motorcycle could save her life. Rock bottom has a motorcycle. The first weeks in India looked nothing like the adventure that would eventually inspire millions. Noraly arrived with a simple plan. She would backpack through the country while supporting herself by blogging and writing travel stories. The idea was practical and hopeful. It fell apart almost immediately. The stories did not sell. The money ran dangerously low. Cold nights became regular. Hunger became familiar. Fear and loneliness wrapped around her like a second skin. Those early days bore no resemblance to the confident traveler who would later appear on camera crossing deserts and climbing mountain passes. This was survival in its rawest form. Finding the next meal, finding somewhere safe to sleep, finding a reason to keep going when everything felt impossible. But something unexpected happened during those difficult weeks. The constant struggle to survive left no room for replaying the betrayal. There was no time to drown in memories of the affair, the broken trust, the life that had collapsed. Attention shifted entirely to the present moment. Where is the next shelter? How do I stay warm tonight? What do I eat tomorrow? The pain did not disappear, but it was forced into the background by more immediate concerns. And then motorcycles entered the picture. Riding was not new to Noraly. Back in the Netherlands, she had owned a Ducati Monster 796, a bike she described with genuine affection and excitement. That love for riding had been dormant, pushed aside by the stability of career and relationship. But in India, far from everything familiar, a rental shop offered Royal Enfield Himalayans for 3-week adventures. Those 3 weeks changed everything. Noraly later explained that riding the Himalayan felt so completely right that returning it caused genuine sadness. The motorcycle offered something that had been missing for a long time. Freedom without conditions. Movement without destination. A present moment so absorbing that the past could not intrude. Behind the handlebars, there was no failed relationship, no career expectations, no future demanding answers. There was only the next stretch of road, the next turn, the next breath of wind against the helmet. A question formed in those final days with the rental bike. Why return it at all? Why not buy a motorcycle in India and ride toward Southeast Asia? Why not keep going until the road itself provides direction? That question became a decision. That decision became a journey. That journey became Itchy Boots, from 1 camera to 2.8 million subscribers. The early videos were rough. 1 camera, 1 person, no production team, no polished editing suite. Just Noraly, her motorcycle, and unfamiliar roads stretching toward horizons she had never seen. The equipment was basic. The skills were developing. The stories were raw and unfiltered in ways that would later become the channel's greatest strength. Growth did not happen overnight, but it happened faster than anyone expected. Within the first year, the YouTube channel reached 300,000 subscribers, a number that already felt overwhelming for someone who had started filming simply to document personal experiences. The audience grew because the content felt real. Viewers could sense something authentic beneath the footage. This was not a polished travel show designed to sell a fantasy. This was someone genuinely navigating unfamiliar territory, making mistakes, facing challenges, and sharing the process without pretense. Today, that same channel stands at more than 2.8 million subscribers, with over 618 million total views. 5 years on the road. More than 600 episodes. Over 60 countries crossed on motorcycle tires. Numbers that still seem impossible when placed beside the humble beginning of one heartbroken woman escaping to India with nothing but a backpack and desperation. How did such growth happen without a big production team or professional studio? The answer, according to Noraly, rested in dedication that bordered on obsession. Countless hours spent editing every single episode alone on a laptop. Choosing work over time with family and friends. Missing holidays, celebrations, and ordinary moments of connection because the next video needed finishing. The admission carried quiet honesty. The process could feel lonely, but consistency and quality mattered more than comfort. That relentless dedication slowly transformed Itchy Boots from a personal project into a globally recognized brand. The philosophy behind the content also set it apart. Noraly described a love for random places far from famous tourist spots, villages that never appear in guidebooks, back roads that most travelers ignore, overlooked regions where everyday life offers deeper insight than any landmark ever could. This approach created stories that felt genuine rather than staged. Why chase crowded destinations when quiet places reveal more truth about cultures and people? Imperfection became part of the appeal. Noraly openly accepted that many videos were released despite visible mistakes, rough edits, or moments that did not meet personal standards. Rather than waiting for perfection, progress mattered more. The idea was simple. Do better next time. Keep moving. Keep improving. Keep sharing. That mindset resonated powerfully with viewers who recognized similar struggles in their own lives. Mistakes did not signal failure. Mistakes signaled learning. That honesty removed the distance between creator and audience. What emerged was not just a subscriber count, but something that felt more like family. A community built on shared curiosity, mutual respect, and encouragement rather than polished illusion. People did not just watch Itchy Boots. They connected with it. They rooted for Noraly through every challenge, every breakdown, every border crossing that threatened to derail the journey. Stolen bikes and closed borders. The journey was never as smooth as highlight reels might suggest. Challenges appeared constantly, and Noraly never hid those moments from her audience. Transparency about struggles became as important as celebrating successes. One of the most frightening experiences occurred in Iraq. A morning that started with routine quickly turned into shock. After breakfast, Noraly walked toward where her motorcycle was parked and found only a cover lying on the ground. The motorcycle itself had vanished. Stolen. Gone. In a foreign country, thousands of miles from home, the primary tool of her entire journey had simply disappeared. That moment introduced fear, confusion, and sudden vulnerability in ways that comfortable viewers rarely experience. What happens when your motorcycle vanishes in a country where you do not speak the language fluently? How does a journey continue when trust feels broken? How do you process the violation of having something essential taken from you? Noraly explained that resilience mattered more than panic. Recovery took time. The experience reinforced the unpredictable nature of long-distance travel in ways no amount of planning could prevent. But the journey continued. It always continued. Mechanical problems added another layer of constant stress. Stories accumulated involving severed wiring, broken parts, and sudden failures occurring far from proper repair shops. Each breakdown forced improvisation, patience, and problem-solving under pressure. Skills developed not from manuals or courses, but from necessity. When your motorcycle dies in a remote location, you either figure it out or you stop moving. Stopping was never an option. Border crossings created yet another recurring obstacle. Tension and uncertainty arrived at nearly every frontier. Paperwork that should have been straightforward became complicated. Officials who should have been helpful became suspicious. Hours stretched into days, waiting for stamps and permissions that might never come. The most serious consequence of these issues appeared when a planned book tour in the United States had to be canceled entirely. Immigration concerns raised fears of detention or deportation, leading Noraly to explain publicly that traveling to the U.S. did not feel safe at that time. That decision disappointed thousands of supporters who had hoped to meet her in person, but it highlighted a reality rarely discussed in travel content. Borders, paperwork, and politics can suddenly stop even the most carefully planned journeys. No amount of subscribers or views provides immunity from bureaucratic walls. Through all of these challenges, Noraly maintained a tone that viewers found remarkably grounding. Curious instead of judgmental. Cautious rather than reckless. Thoughtful rather than dramatic. Problems were acknowledged, processed, and overcome without performance or exaggeration. That steady presence became a compass for everyone following the journey, guiding millions through chaos with clarity and calm. The long road back, months of rehabilitation followed the crash, each day bringing its own battles between progress and frustration. The journey back to health unfolded in therapy rooms and hospital corridors, far removed from the open roads that had defined Noraly's existence for 5 years. Physical therapy sessions pushed damaged muscles and healing bones to their limits, demanding effort that felt exhausting even on the best days. The work was repetitive and humbling. Exercises that would have seemed laughably simple before the crash now required full concentration just to complete. Progress came in increments so small they were almost invisible, measured not in kilometers but in degrees of motion regained and seconds of endurance added. Cardiovascular training worked to restore the lung capacity that had been so violently compromised by the puncture. Breathing exercises that would have seemed trivial before now required concentration and deliberate effort. Every inhale reminded her of what had been lost. Every exhale measured how far she still had to travel before her body could function the way it once did. Specialists monitored oxygen levels and respiratory function constantly, watching for signs of setback that could erase weeks of progress in a single moment. The lung that had collapsed needed time to fully heal, and rushing the process risked complications that could become permanent. The broken collarbone and lingering effects on shoulder and chest created their own set of challenges that extended far beyond the initial injury. Handling a motorcycle over long distances requires upper body strength, stability, and endurance that most people never think about. Every bump in the road transmits force through the handlebars into the shoulders and arms. Every turn requires subtle adjustments of weight and posture. These movements that had once been instinctive now had to be relearned from the ground up. Posture required conscious attention with every shift of position. Control demanded deliberate focus that exhausted her mentally before her body even began to tire. Endurance that had once seemed limitless now had boundaries that could not be ignored or pushed through without consequences. Specialists explained that compromised lung function limits far more than just breathing. It affects oxygen intake during exertion, overall stamina, and the ability to sustain high-intensity effort over extended periods. A rider crossing continents needs reserves of energy that take months to rebuild after major trauma. Every mile of prior experience had to be reevaluated through the lens of new limitations that might prove temporary with enough work, or might become permanent features of a changed body. The psychological rehabilitation proved equally demanding, and in some ways more unpredictable. Fear does not disappear simply because bones heal and scars fade. The memory of the crash lived in her nervous system, embedded in ways that conscious thought could not always control, ready to surface at unexpected moments. A patch of gravel, a sharp turn, a shadow that looked like danger. The body remembers trauma even when the mind tries to move forward. Climbing onto a motorcycle for the first time after such an accident required courage that went beyond physical capability. Her hands remembered the handlebars, but her mind remembered the moment everything went wrong. The sound of impact, the helplessness of falling, the pain that followed. Therapists emphasized the importance of controlled exposure, starting with short rides in safe environments before gradually extending distance and difficulty. Each successful ride rebuilt a fragment of the confidence that the crash had shattered. Each day without incident loosened the grip of fear that had wrapped itself around her identity as a rider. The process could not be rushed. Trust in the motorcycle had to be rebuilt alongside trust in her own judgment and reflexes. Throughout the recovery, fans and supporters followed her progress with a mixture of curiosity and genuine concern. They witnessed not just a story of injury, but a story of resilience unfolding in real time across updates and occasional videos. The same qualities that had carried Noraly through heartbreak in the Netherlands and across 60 countries now carried her through the darkest chapter of her journey. Persistence when progress felt invisible. Discipline when motivation faltered on difficult days. Refusal to accept defeat when defeat seemed like the only reasonable option available. The process was incremental and cumulative, built from countless small victories that meant nothing in isolation but everything when stacked together over weeks and months. Each successful therapy session built confidence for the next challenge. Each day without setback reinforced the belief that full recovery remained possible, that the road still waited somewhere beyond the hospital walls, that the journey was not over yet. Her journey began as an escape, but it became a testament to resilience, determination, and the refusal to be broken. From heartbreak in the Netherlands to crash sites in South America, every mile tested her body, mind, and spirit, and every setback revealed just how far one person could go when nothing is left to lose. But if this was only one chapter, what comes next? How do you rebuild a life when the road behind is full of scars and the road ahead is uncertain? Noraly Schoenmaker's story is far from finished. The motorcycle waits, the horizon stretches endlessly, and the next challenge and revelation could be just over the bend. Are you ready to see where the road leads? The next chapter is already beginning.